Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. I am BrotherofHavok, also known as Havok for short. Today, by popular request and demand, I'm going to be going over details about the plasma cannon. First, I would like to take a look at the description, and then we'll go into the weapons stats for both basic, prototype, and officer versions. I always recommend that you check out the description page of a weapon, since CCP generally tries to both hide and reveal details about the weapons in the vaguest of places. It's kind of hard to actually determine sometimes what CCP actually wanted out of a weapon, and sometimes the description isn't all that great, but you can actually learn quite a bit from it. And as you can see here, the plasma cannon is a single-shot direct-fire weapon. That obviously means that its main function is to be as completely accurate as possible. It's not meant to be used for splash damage like most explosive weaponry, like the mass drivers, the flaylocks, or REs and grenades. This doesn't mean that it cannot be used for splash damage, as the splash damage is pretty decent, as we'll find out a little bit. But it works better if you hit them dead on. In other words, tanks, anything that's huge and big, the fact that you can get a easier shot on them means that you should always go for that direct shot. Infantry, it depends on the situation. Its primary use is in urban operations and confined space combat, meaning that it is better to use in CQC or close quarters combat, but not limited to CQC. At the bottom, it also goes on about a projectile that helps guide the discharge. CCP logic. I take this to mean that unlike other weapons which have a dispersion radius, like the AR, the CR, the rail rifle, the plasma cannon actually has it will always fire in the same spot if aimed properly. Hip fire will have that natural amount of shaking and inaccuracy, meaning that the weapon, as the weapon shakes, the round might not go exactly where you were hoping it to. But if you aim down sights, it almost always goes down a straight vertical line on the screen. So you should be able to hit the same spot, assuming that you don't move the mouse and keyboard or the controller. Essentially you're not changing your direction, you're just reloading and firing. You should always hit the exact same spot. Basically from the description we can take away the following. One round for all the weapons. You have to be accurate. There is splash damage, so you can use it that way. And it is very CQC friendly, and you always should make sure to aim down sights whenever possible. Now, as far as the individual stats go, basic versus prototype, there's only one difference, and that is damage output. So always go for prototype as soon as whenever you have the possibility, unless you're trying to be economically efficient. Prototypes will always get the most from damage mods and Galente commando bonuses. What else? So as you can see here, that the basic has 1155 damage direct, and the prototype has over 1500. This means that not including damage mods, efficacies, commando, war bars, or proficiency bonuses, this weapon can almost one-shot any suit in the game. Basics have a harder time, especially with heavies, but the prototypes generally will one-shot most suits unless they stack HP mods. Now, for the officer weapon, we have the Kubo's GMK-16 Plasma Cannon Officer variant. This bad boy was named after the CEO of my corporation, the Planet Express, after he won the challenge event for the new officer weapons. Unlike all other plasma cannons, this thing has a 2-round clip, which immediately makes it 10 times more dangerous. And I do mean 10 times, as essentially a single player can pump out twice the number of rounds before needing to reload. There's no decrease in reload speed, meaning that this thing reloads at the exact same amount as the other weapons. It also has a slight damage buff, meaning that it also can increase the bonuses from any kind of mods, the commando bonuses, the proficiency bonuses, the efficacy bonuses, the war barge bonuses, and of course the complex light damage modifiers. These things will increase that dramatically. And I have to say one thing that is sometimes scary to see, but a Galente commando with max skills and two of the Kubo's plasma cannons is death to vehicles, with almost, and it can also be death to infantry too, since it almost has 400 points of splash damage alone. So it's something to really take into consideration we're facing against. Now CQC, with the plasma cannon, if you're close enough, I'd say within about 5 meters, you won't need to lead the target at all. Just point and hold onto the trigger and click. Always, of course, beware of splash damage. If you're a bit further out than 5 meters, you may have to lead the target slightly. Treat the plasma cannon like a slow-moving shotgun. You do that, you should be good. Remember not to be afraid to use the splash damage. It's pretty high, so use it. Now, of course, the plasma cannon is an AV or anti-vehicle weapon, and I always feel like there's two things that go hand in hand whenever you're shooting: luck and anticipation. Many times when you're shooting a vehicle, you have to anticipate where they're driving. Because the round is so slow, you cannot aim straight at the vehicle unless it's at a dead stop or right in front of you. Now, I find that what most often gets enemy vehicles destroyed is their own daring or even stupidity. Sometimes a player that knows that there is AV in an area will come back and try to deal with that AV. These are perfect opportunities for you to get the final blow. Now, keep in mind that with dropships, there are special circumstances you have to take into account. The fact that there is actually an open space in the middle of the dropship means that when it's sideways to you, you have to aim hopefully either upwards or downwards at the dropship or at the front and back ends. Otherwise, as you can see here, I actually managed to shoot through the back area, the passenger area of the dropship, and I completely miss the ship and do no damage to it. The first step to successfully employing a plasma cannon over a long range is to actually range the distance between you and the target. The maximum range of a plasma cannon is 225 meters. I believe the officer variant is 250 meters. So essentially what you always want to do first is just make sure that you can actually hit it rather than wasting 3 or 4 shots hoping. Also keep an eye on that hit detection marker that appears around your crosshair. You'll see it pop up. It's like a little kind of a red X almost. Now, generally at these extreme ranges, you're going to have to actually aim fairly high up above the target itself. I almost never aim for infantry. It's kind of just like a long shot. For installations, though, it's a no-brainer. You can easily do it, especially if you have a nano hive. Waste a few shots, get that proper height before you start unloading your gun. Now, once you get a better understanding of how the plasma cannon's trajectory works and how you should anticipate, aim, and what kind of targeting how you should target the enemy, I more than recommend that you actually go ahead and try to get the long-range shots. You may spend a lot of ammo and it can be difficult, but that reward of getting that surprise plasma shot kill, as you can see here, we're doing like this bombardment back and forth across this pit, and I completely am not intending on actually killing anyone with any kind of damage from this thing. I'm just taken completely by surprise when I actually get a kill. So much so that I actually even begin a little dance. Now, how to practice with a plasma cannon? I'd actually recommend spawning in a location out in the boonies, somewhere that even though you fire widely into the air, the enemies can't see you. And just pick a target, just a random spot on the map, and try to aim for it. If you miss, no big deal. Just aim slightly higher or slightly lower, or side to side, or whatever the case may be. All you're essentially just trying to do is just practice hitting a single spot. I generally would actually recommend you on certain maps there are high spots you can actually look down at enemies. This is generally what I would find to be best, is to essentially practice aiming straight down and then work your way upwards. But if there's not that many maps that honestly you feel like that can really work out too well. So basically just go in the middle of the boonies and just aim and do whatever. It's essentially the same way I practice with the flay-lock pistol and even some grenades, is essentially just trying to figure out your range and how you should throw or use certain weapons in order to get the desired effect. It can be kind of frustrating especially on a game like this where basically I got completely stomped. But essentially, there's several good reasons as to why you should practice using plasma cannons. Number one, it's always useful against vehicles, and number two is I find there's nothing more that can create a suppression-like effect than a giant ball of heated plasma and fire. Now, just a little reminder, the plasma cannon, it is primarily considered an AV weapon. It's very useful against shield, tanks, dropships, and the like, but it can also be used against infantry. I have used it successfully at range, mostly due to the enemies being not paying attention to me or just not moving when they should have. It can also be used for CQC, close quarters combat. It's supposed to be more CQC than it is ranged attacks, but that's, you know, whatever the point is. It does have a decent amount of splash damage, about twice the amount of splash damage of any mass driver shot. That can be quite useful, but at the same time, I wouldn't rely on it too much unless you're in a position that you have to, or you understand a bit more about what you're supposed to be doing. As I said, practice out in the boonies, or, you know, you could be spending a lot of shots and a lot of games practicing, or you could spend 2 or 3 games just to kind of understand, get the feel for it. You will waste a lot of shots, so I almost always pack a nano hive, but that's just kind of one of the things that you will have to do when getting used to new weapons. You always have to lead targets at, I would say, probably anywhere outside of 5 meters. In other words, if you're close enough for splash damage to hit you, then you don't have to lead the target. If you're a little bit further, I would lead the target, mostly for just the fact that the enemies will be moving, but also for the fact that there are some hit detection issues that CCP still has in place. And as always, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any comments or any requests for something else I should do, please put it in the comment section below. Like if you could, and subscribe to my channel. I'm BrotherofHavok, and I hope you have a nice night and pleasant dreams.